Hello, everyone, and welcome to our countdown of our 105th anniversary of our office. And in celebration of this, we're interviewing either the prior chief actuaries or families of the prior chief actuaries. So with us today, we have Sari Fromberg. Sari is the daughter of Jesse Feld, who was our second chief actuary in New York City. And Jesse served from 1961 to 1973. So it's a pleasure to have with us today, Sari. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. And, let's get to know your father a little bit. When he served as New York City chief actuary, who were the mayors that he worked for?
Robert Wagner and John Lindsay.
Okay, so there's two that he worked for, more than me, because I'm still on my first mayor right now that I'm working for. And, tell us a little about your father when he was in the office, and, what were some of the stories that you heard of him being the chief actuary?
Well, my father was New York City chief actuary from 1961 until his death in June of 1973. And at the time of his appointment as chief actuary, I was a college student living out of state. His job was so out of my realm of understanding then, and my father was so unassuming about his accomplishments, his esteem within his profession eluded me. When I moved back to New York City, I realized the extent to which he was respected within his profession. The one thing he taught me when I entered the workforce a few years later was to treat everyone whom I work with respect and dignity, no matter their position. His philosophy was always treat others as you would want them to treat you. And as an aside, another little story that I have about him was my son Jason's first job out of college was with Martin E. Siegel Company. When Mr. Siegel was told Jesse Feld's grandson was one of his new employees, Jason was summoned to his office. Mr. Siegel and my father had such mutual respect for one another. Mr. Siegel wanted to meet Jason and reminisce.
Much like, capturing this moment and interviewing you. So I can tell from how you describe your father that, he was very humble, much like what you were saying that, one of his advice is always to treat people with respect, no matter where in the company that they work at or for. So I can tell he's very humble. And you alluded to, you had you didn't know this big job that your father had, right? And
right.
Your father. And so that comes off as, he definitely has a very humble personality. So outside of work, can you tell us a little bit more about how he was as a person, like maybe his, other personality traits and maybe his hobbies and other things?
Well, even though he was just an average golfer by his own admission, that is, my dad loved the sport. And he particularly enjoyed teaming up with his work buddies, Bill Scott and Mike Donson. He was also an avid reader. Family, immediate and extended, was a huge part of his life as well. Honesty, integrity, and compassion for others was always a part of who he was. And I feel I'm blessed that he passed those traits down to me.
Yeah. And you spoke about golfing. And so, I think that your father had passed away on a golf course, unfortunately.
Yes.
And I'm sure if he hadn't, his term would be much longer than 12 years. So he worked all the way up to the day that he passed away, right?
Yes, well, he was at a convention the week prior to his passing away. He came home on a Friday night or Saturday morning, and he passed away. Well, he passed away actually on Saturday. He came home on Friday, passed away on Saturday playing golf.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'm sure he would have been even a better golfer if he had more
opportunity. Right. But he was doing what he loved to do, that in his work. So I guess it can't be that bad. Who knows? But
and if you were, what do you think his, what would you say that he would wish his legacy had been?
His legacy, one could always depend on his honesty, integrity, dignity, and respect for others. He had a great mind and loved his work, and he passed away before his time, but is still remembered for his ideals and accomplishments for the city of New York. And it is my hope that his contributions will always be remembered within the actuarial community.
Yeah, well, definitely is remembered in our office, and sharing.
Right.
And if he was still around to mentor future chief actuaries or aspiring chief actuaries, what do you think some of his advice would be for them?
Well, so many years have passed since my dad was chief actuary, but there are some basics which I assume still exist. And I'm sure that he would agree that the actuarial field is even more rewarding and stimulating today, with opportunities far more diverse than when he was a part of it. So I believe he would advise newcomers to work hard, enjoy their work, but never lose their sense of humor. And to remember honesty, integrity, and respect.
Yes, I think those are very good advice, because humor for one thing, and makes the day in the office less stressful sometimes and faster. So, and I recall you said you have a story about always having a New Year's Eve memory of your father.
Right. Yes, I do. Well, my mother was left holding the bag so many years because he was downtown trying to hammer out the last minute parts of new contracts that had to be completed by January 1st for the 5 New York City divisions that he was chief actuary for. Mm-hmm. So I remember him working extremely hard then and being away from home for long periods of time during that time of year.
Yeah. Well, he definitely was a hard worker.
Right.
So, well, thank you, Sari, for joining us today and being with us and sharing the great stories of your father.
Okay, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.